What's up YouTubes, Mountain Man Magic, and we got our two-headed giant pre-release video for Core Set 2019. Now, two-headed giant is one of my favorite events to play at every pre-release with my friends, with whoever, with new people. It's just a great environment, great atmosphere to bring people in and play and just have a good time with the new set. So this video is going to show you what cards are going to be impacted by playing in two-headed giant versus a one-on-one pre-release type game. So hopefully this video helps give you some ideas to run with, and keep in mind when you're looking through your pool of cards, let's get into it. So in two-headed giant, you and your partner both get your own pre-release kits, and then amongst yourselves, you now have 12 booster packs and 2 promos to build the 2 best decks possible. Now, typically what this means is one deck is going to be focused on either the mid game or early game, and one's focused on more the mid to late game, or one's control and one's creatures. Typically, it ends up with 2 different type of decks because it's giving you the ability to make sure that you're using all your most powerful cards, and usually that doesn't fall into one style of deck. Anyway, the point of this video is to show you what cards help you really get the most bang for your buck from every card you're playing. Now remember, when you're playing and it says creatures you control or your graveyard or your library, that still just talks about your side of the board, your one head of this two-headed giant. But when it says each opponent or all players or anything like that, now you have multiple ways to either trigger it, or you're getting extra value out of this ability. You're getting way more bang for your buck, hopefully, with the cards you're playing. So we're going to go through these cards, Warburg order, starting with white, starting with a reprint from Dominaria, Pegasus Courser. Now, Pegasus Courser was one of the best white commons in Dominaria, especially as a 3-drop creature that gives another creature evasion. This card's sweet because it gives target attacking creature flying, meaning I can attack with Pegasus Courser, and now my partner's bomb now has flying. And again, it's going to cause your opponents to now have to respond to basically 2 threats, because if Pegasus Courser stays on the board, you're now giving every other creature on the board the potential to have flying when it's attacking, or they're having to get rid of this and then deal with the big threat right next to it. So it's a pretty great card if you ask me. Nightly Valor, I'm just going to throw out there because I like the idea of being able to protect my partner's creatures, especially their big bombs. If we know that they have some type of removal that's at a specific number point, if I can get our bomb out of that range, this is a really nice card, as well as I can enchant their creature and then get myself a 2/2 token as well. That's not bad. I'm not saying this is a great card, like this is tier 1 type cardage, but depending on the decks that you come up with, this card may make the cut. And this isn't two-headed giant specific, but I just like the idea of going Star Crown Stag, go to combat, tap something, and then in your second main phase, play Take Vengeance and just kill whatever big creature they were hoping to block with or are planning to block with next turn. That's a pretty nice little sweet combo. Next up is blue, and now this is a card that I'm bringing up, Sleep, because it is not quite as good in two-headed giant. When it says target opponent, it means only really one side of the board can be tapped down. So this card isn't quite as good. Chances are it's still going to provide a lot of value. You're probably playing it if you get it. However, Uncomfortable Chill will affect both opponents, so this is definitely a card to keep an eye out for, especially if you have a really good go wide or go over the top type deck and they're just trying to block and maybe trade. Now you're making sure they can't trade effectively. This is a really nice card. Two-headed giant's also a bit slower on average because you just have more possibilities for gumming up the ground or having more answers. So I would say that Windreader Sphinx here, you can definitely play this card, and if you get it down, you're probably going to be drawing cards to the point where you just win off your massive card advantage. If you have any ramp and you end up in a ramp deck, then you definitely want to play this card. I'd say it's pretty playable though in two-headed giant. And now we're going to get a little crazy, because there's a lot of potential here for a good mill deck. Like, no joke. For example, we could go blue-black, and the blue cards would be something like Patient Rebuilding. Now this card is going to be great because it's going to get you card advantage, and it's a legitimate mill threat in limited when you're milling every turn like this. You got something like Psychic Corrosion. Both of these cards are going to get you to mill one or both of your opponents down. Now with Patient Rebuilding, you're just focusing on the same opponent each turn, of course, but Psychic Corrosion, you could hit both. That's a big deal, especially if you mill off their one answer or whatever it could be. You know, granted, you could also mill them closer to their answer, but building a mill deck here is not out of the question. Like, your partner could go white-green or some type of token-wide deck just to protect you while you mill your opponent down. Now, there are black cards to keep in mind that would definitely help. One of these would be Fell Scepter. Now, this card you can definitely build around Intuitive Giant and go for that mill strategy, because you combo it with the blue cards. Even go cards like Duress. It's usually a risky play, especially if you don't get it out. If you can play it turn 1, sure, you would always play this card. But if you draw it like turn 6, top deck it, turn 7, top deck it. probably not ideal. But with 2 opponents to target as well, you're usually going to have a good target for it. And we have cards like Mind Rot, which I also like, because if you can get it off, it can be backbreaking, it can just get you great card advantage, and you're going to be having a strong advantage throughout the game if you have a deck that has multiple options, because you're probably going to be able to target your opponent or opponents pretty consistently and get good value out of these cards. A phenomenal recursion card, especially for 2-headed giant, Rise from the Grave. Get one of those great creatures from any graveyard that you've killed or milled or whatever, and it's now yours for 5 mana. Yeah, this is definitely a good card. 100% should make whoever's playing the black deck. And last but not least, we have Vampire Neonate, which hits both opponents. So you can drain them for 2 life, you only gain 1, but still, for 2 mana, that's a pretty solid every turn type threat, especially if they can't deal with it, or if it causes your opponent to have to waste a more premium removal spell on a small creature like this. That's usually a win that you're happy to take. Red, again, red is not messing around in this set, and in 2-headed giant, there's a lot of good cards as well. Active Treason, I've seen the kidnap and attack cards like this, especially in 2-headed giant, really swing the game, because if you're starting to get ahead, but one of their players is, one of your opponents is able to stabilize the board, when you play a card like this, and you just take that big threat and you swing on them, that's really hard to deal with, and it's not quite as resource intensive for your entire team, because hopefully your partner still has answers or can still affect the board after you take that creature from your opponent, if you're not just closing the game out right there with it. So I would say give it a chance depending on you and your partner's strategies. If you're going aggro, this card definitely makes it. And if you want a late game threat that says, okay, I take your big bomb and swing on you to get those last few points of damage in when we're in that stalemate phase, this card could definitely get you over the top. Demanding Dragon, I like this card because it's really nice in the sense that you get to target either maybe the opponent that has 1 card left in hand that they've been holding on to and they've been trying to not get rid of it until they can really play it for maximum value, or you target the opponent that doesn't have any cards in hand, and now you've just got a really nice, unexpected, probably 5 damage. Demanding Dragon, I think, even has more value in 2-headed giant. Goblin Motivator is nice because you can haste your partner's creatures too. Sometimes one head has to be positive, can do attitude type, and you're just going to be there to give your partner's creatures a little you can do it buddy boost of encouragement. Guitersnipe, just in general, it's always nice when a creature has each opponent because now they're doing double damage. And Guitersnipe is amazing in a 1v1 matchup. It's now crazy good in a 2-headed giant matchup because red has so many options, and especially having 12 packs, you're going to be able to build a good red something deck that's going to have a solid amount of instants and sorceries. So them taking 4 damage every time you basically cast an instant or sorcery spell is going to take the game over really quickly if they can't answer it. So this is a slam in your red deck, no questions asked type of card for 2-headed giant. And then Sarkhan's Unsealing, again, because 2-headed giant's slower, and you're probably going to be able to build your deck to focus on getting the max value, and hopefully your partner can support you to get to those cards, Sarkhan's Unsealing can win the game for you and your partner hands down. I mean, the artwork alone is good enough to play. But you look at the ability, and every time you're playing that big mid-range creature, you're getting value. And if you play a huge creature, now you're just getting a pretty massive blowout. You're taking over the game. This is 100% a card I would like to play just for the fun factor. If we can pull it off and it goes well, I think it's a pretty sweet card. If you do play it, best of luck. Not against me, but best of luck. Now moving on into green, we got Blanchwood Armor, which I think is a pretty cool card to play. What's really cool is you can put it on your partner's creature, and then every time you play a forest, you've now pumped your partner's bomb up. And it's pretty cool because if you're able to put it on an evasive threat or something like that, now it's getting even more dangerous. It's getting harder to remove because every time you're playing forests, like you typically are going to want to do, you're pumping your threat up. I think it's pretty good to have 2 players that can maximize the value of the cards in your hand, like a Blanchwood Armor. Opponents attack with their own creatures, but a card like Gasbark Twin is nice because now this card can block 1 from head 1 and 1 from head 2. So it's pretty good that if you get and are needing a staller at turn 7, ideally, you now have a card like Gasbark that can give you and your partner a little breathing room to stop multiple threats. This one's probably on the lower end of extra value, but hey, it's there. Now, a more obvious card, maybe something like Runic Armasaur. Chances are you'll get to draw some cards having 2 players now that can trigger his ability. It's still just a really efficient, good card in general. I would recommend playing it anyway because blue-white is typically a pretty popular archetype, especially when it has more evasion, especially with this set looking so strong for blue and white, that you're going to get some triggers off this. It's already an efficient creature. I would say run with it regardless of what you know your opponent's playing or don't know your opponent's playing. And then last but not least for green, we got Rabid Bite, where you can target your teammates' creatures if they're getting out of line, and that you get to really show, here's how I assert my dominance, is biting something unexpectedly. It's still not recommended though. But you can do it. But I wouldn't. And again, the gold cards, they're all good. But the ones that are even better in Two-Headed Giant, well, for our black-blue mill deck, maybe not better, but definitely something to keep an eye out for, is Psychic Symbiont. This card is, one, just really effective, really good value, and if you can combo it with other cards that you've already gotten out, boom, there's Value Town for you. Enjoy it, have a great time, best of luck to you with the mill deck. Really, I hope someone does pull it off. But I think my favorite gold card, the one that I'm fingers crossed hoping to get, is Poison Tip Archer. You can kill their creatures, your creatures, whatever. Each one that dies now deals 2 damage to your opponents. So, I mean, this card is 100% going to win, close out, end games, no questions asked. It's already super annoying to deal with because it's got reach and death touch. It's a super efficient creature. I mean, this card is really good. Someone at your, if you open this, find a way to play it because it's that good. And of course, we got these cards which are already bombs and huge threats, but the one that gets even more value, Bolus, you're going to get multiple discards out of now. Big name incoming, Vea Victus. Vivictus Asmati the Dire is going to just decimate the board if your opponents can't deal with it right away. I mean, it's a big dragon, so it kind of should decimate the board, but this guy is going to put your opponents in a dire situation. You couldn't help yourself. You just had to. And then colorless, of course, we got Millstone, because if you're going for the mill deck, they've reprinted the quintessential, very nice. This artwork is kind of sad, although it's really awesome. Big fan of it. But you got Millstone. So if you got a mill deck, hopefully you get a couple of these bad boys. Boom, perfect fit. And now I got one more warning to throw out there. I'm saying if you pull a card like Magistrate's Scepter, that you 100% do not play this card because it takes such a massive investment. I mean, you got to play it, then you got to put 3 counters on it, and then the next turn you can finally use it. So it's like 5 turns of investment. And the idea that your opponents aren't going to be playing some type of main-boarded artifact enchantment removal, especially in this format when it's a bit more casual and there's so many good enchantments and potentially really good artifacts out there, I could see them just chuckling to themselves as you dump 10 plus mana into this thing and then they go, oh, on our end step, I'm going to kill your artifact that was going to give you 1 extra turn that you've basically spent. Just don't play this card. Just don't. And the last card that is definitely playable is Suspicious Bookcase, because you can now target your creature or your partner's creature and they're not getting blocked. They're just going in the back entrance. They found the little secret knock knock 3 times, slip in and just stab them and then come right back out like nothing ever happened. Totally casual. Suspicious Bookcase seems like a lot of fun. It's got pretty hilarious art. I don't know how a bookcase in a wall is able to really, like, if I'm a creature, I'm not going to walk up to a suspicious bookcase. I'm not even going to go in the house. Why am I in a house in the middle of this battle? I don't know. You know what? It's hilarious. That's all that matters. If you get this card, play it. Best of luck to you. And that's our Two-Headed Giant video. If you haven't played it before, 100% you should do it. Give it a try, especially if you have some friends that you're trying to get into it or are curious about playing Magic. This is a format where it allows you to actually do some hand-holding. It lets you guys have a good time. I've taken my friends to it. They always have a good time. It's just one of our favorite formats, hands down. No questions asked. If you are playing it, you know you are. Best of luck to you. Let me know what kind of decks you pull off. Let me know how your pre-release goes in general. But either way, if you enjoy the content, hit that subscribe button. Give me a like or a comment. I would much appreciate it. It genuinely makes my day. But regardless, thank you for watching. Hope life's treating you well. Best of luck in your pre-release. Peace.